Tales of Eldalorn, a heroic fantasy alpha novella by Carly Bond. It is difficult to get over trauma. In Eldalorn, all they have is long memory, the wisdom of an old king, and some trees. We seem to be in a utopian moment in the story, so let's enjoy the peace that we have for now. If it was up to my friend George, he would have killed off half the cast. But I was like, we only have 4 characters. We can't do that. And I already got yelled at for the things that they went through in the first book. Hey, it doesn't even get better. Ha 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 ha. If you don't believe me, click the follow button and listen along, or buy the book on Amazon.com. You can buy book 2 right now, pre-ordered, just in time for the holiday season. You can even gift one to somebody that you know. Buy a book and read along. And with that said, on with the show. Chapter 3, The Old Guard. Nolan was sitting among the orange and yellow flowers, listening to buzzing bees, enjoying their low humming sounds. Clouds slowly trickled past in the sky. "This is a kind of paradise," Nolan said softly. "I am glad to be with you." She sat up to sip the hot soup Fiona had just given her. Fiona sat down among the branches with her own cup, then looked up at the clouds. "Do you want to sail to the island to see what it looks like?" she asked. "Yes, I'm happy for the bodies of our kin to be in the arms of the lords, and not turned to stone forever in that cold tomb." Nolan seemed contented. "I agree," Fiona lazily replied. Fiona was going to ask Nolan if she wanted her hair braided, but she could see it was already done. "Are you and Rowash doing okay?" "My captivity was a bad dream. That monster, that was not my Rowash." Nolan thought reflectively for a moment and then confided, "Ro suffers so when he thinks too much on what happened to us. I'm afraid he will talk his mind into his own destruction." Fiona felt real fear rising in her gut, remembering the anger Agelum experienced the first time he was brought back into the mortal realm. She was at the wizard's house in Drustenloch. Master Fargal said it was normal to feel such unreasonable emotions. But Agelum had gone mad and almost ended himself right in front of her. Thank the gods for wizards' magic. Fiona shook herself back from such vivid memories. "I think we need to hug Ro a lot and make it known that we love him." Fiona frowned uncomfortably, not knowing what else they could do. "He told me he could not command. This has been his whole life before the mad gods assault on him. The men of the fort are going to be disappointed." Nolan sipped on her broth, gazing up again to watch the clouds above, oblivious to her sister's growing fear. "He says it's too much power to have over human lives. What he recalls of the cult is not good." Nolan looked fearfully at Fiona. "Maybe you can comfort him by listening as you've listened to my story. It makes it easier to bear, knowing someone else knows of it and cares." Nolan reached out and squeezed Fiona's hand. "I think it must be unspeakable," Fiona quietly said. "I am his friend, and I've listened to all his past stories, but he has not come to me with this one." Fiona had been looking at a fat bee that plopped off the edge of a flower and was struggling with its wings to lift off the ground. She thought to help it, but it finally gained some momentum on its own and buzzed away. "If he speaks, I will listen," Fiona assured her sister. "He has seen more violence than I can even imagine." "Retirement is his due," Fiona said in retrospect. "You both should be allowed to enjoy a quiet life with your family and son Elgillian." Nolan broke into a huge smile. "The little one will keep us busy for many long years. We will stay here to raise him among the family trees." She was beaming as she thought about her newborn. "We are going to have to send for him soon." Nolan looked anxious at her sister. Fiona suddenly felt a little relief from her worries as she realized their son might be the only hope of keeping Rovash stable through this final transition time. "I think you both are well enough to handle an elfling, and you have Kale and the rest of us to help." Fiona's voice trailed off. "Remember, Kale cannot speak because they cut out his tongue," Fiona reminded Nolan again. Her sister's memories were still a little muddled at times. Nolan scowled, having witnessed how the cult followers allowed this to happen, along with all the sick behaviors performed by their vile priests. The thought of one of those crazies around her son made her clench her fists. "No, Nolan, Kale is our friend." Fiona saw the horror rising in her sister. She put a hand on her arm to bring her back from such thoughts. "He was the Queen's guard," Fiona quickly said. "They were pretending so they might have a chance to save their princess. Do you remember? Young Kale saved you from that place." Nolan's eyes teared up as she nodded silently. Fiona hugged her. "For such a young man, he was so passionate about keeping us all safe from harm, Nolan. He was also an old friend of Aegelim's from his guard days in Drustenloch," Fiona said. "I wish I had told Darkeen to retrieve them for us, but I did not know how long this rebirth would take." Hey, it's a 30-second message from our sponsor. In the beginning, there was only my idea to share my stories with the world. I wrote a trilogy called Tales of Eldalorn, and I published it to Amazon and Kindle. In the meantime, I researched all available podcasting companies. Anchor was the only one free to use with no restrictions and all the features. And like a dream come true, now my writing can be heard through Spotify, Apple Podcast, and all the pod carriers in the world. And I could have monetized from day one, but I chose not to because sharing my stories with you was more important to me. So if you have a dream to share with the world, go to Anchor FM to get started or download the app. And if you like my stories, go to Amazon.com and buy Tales of Eldalorn by Carly Bond. Thendil was waiting in the garden when Master Fargal suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He had a small pale rabbit, or maybe it was a little cat. It had a gray spot on the top of its head, and it was peering through bulgy eyes from inside his wide sleeve. Thendil gently touched it on the top of the head and marveled at its softness. "This is Master Sibilast," he told her. "He is at the moment in our natural form, but he is also a wizard. But when we are in this form, we call ourselves Pika." Thendil was shocked and sorry she'd pet him on the head like an animal. "Yes, that is why I introduced you in this way. You must realize by now the realm of Ilmatar is not always as it seems." Thendil nodded. "Master Siblast is my closest friend and confidant in many things. You can always trust him," Fargal said. Thendil bowed in proper greeting as Master Siblast jumped down to the ground and transformed into wizard form in front of her. He wasn't as tall, and his robe was a dusty gray color that he shook out and let the dust fly. He had long silvery hair and a whiskery beard that flowed down the front of him. Siblast leaned over and patted Thendil on the head in greeting. She smiled, knowing he meant no harm in getting his point across. Thendil blushed. "Just always remember we leap, not hop." Thendil nodded. "You have learned many things, Thendil. Today we will show you our place in Ilmatar. It is our true home, you might say," Fargal explained. Thendil took the wizard's hand and stepped forward on the common garden path as they always had done. This time the light grew brighter as they passed by the tiny water spout, where Fargal usually stopped for a sip. Thendiel felt the air thicken as it popped inside her ears. She was transported with another step forward into the misty garden, only this was not the gardens of Ilienhenne. The place was filled with ghostly figures milling around among the flowers. There was a great stone well which dominated the center of the place, from which the spirits drank a clear, silvery water. They hung the cup just inside the top edge of the well's lip. "It is the stuff of creation and dreams," Fargel's voice whispered inside Thendiel's head. She felt herself floating. The wizards kept her between them unnoticed as they moved through the garden into the woodlands beyond. "Are you both going to change into your pika form?" Thendiel wondered. They finally came to a clearing, and Thendiel found solid footing beneath her. Master Fergal quickly shifted down into a tall blue-gray hair-like creature with a black nose. Master Siblast was white, but with light gray spots all over him, not just on his head as Thendiel had seen him at first. Fargal sat up tall on his haunches, trying to look as dignified as possible. His large round ears popped up as he bowed to her. Thendiel couldn't help but think that they were both adorable. She had to take a breath and resist the urge to pat them on the head again. "I had a strange dream that occurs all too often, masters," Thendiel confided. "What kind of dream?" Fargal asked. "Please do tell us," Siblast urged. "It is disturbing." Thendiel sat down to speak. "I find myself in a bed that is covered in gemstones and carved symbols that seem familiar, but I cannot read them." The two pika soberly glanced at each other as if understanding something. "Two youths come to me and lay down, one on each side," Thendiel continued, not noticing the wizard's exchange. "The one to my right is as dark as the new moon with eyes that shine like stars. The other to my left is bright shining, as pale as the highest sun. They are both equally pleasing to the senses and love me dearly. I would be loath to choose which is my favorite. I know they are both of equal importance." Thendiel's eyes filled with tears. "I would give my life before choosing one over the other. The dream made me feel so sad, and I wept as my heart broke for the loss of them upon waking. Surely I would not have rejected either one. What does this mean?" Thendiel searched their faces expecting an answer. The pika looked at each other. They both knew something they would not or could not reveal. "We are not sure exactly," Fargal finally confessed. "There is so much that can be interpreted incorrectly in dreams such as this. We could lead you astray by even trying when the proper time is not near." "I suppose you are right. I will trust in your counsel," Thendiel said as she followed them down a path that led further into the trees. "I cannot wait until my sister knows the joy of having her own little one." Nolan tried to smile. Reminded that she was carrying an unborn, Fiona suddenly bolted upright in her seat. "Noll, I am expecting." Her eyes were wide as her smile. Nolan gasped with tears of joy, hugging her little sister. "How did it happen? I mean, I know how it happened, but you are too young for this." Nolan was confused. It was her turn to worry. "We think it is because of this mortal realm. We are the last of the Edeleth, and we might be changing," Fiona said. "This maturing faster might mean our lives are quickening." "You do not think we're becoming mortal like humans?" Nolan was distressed at the thought of that. "I do not know," Fiona's brow furrowed. "Aethelm and I have spoken on it many times. We will have to remember to ask King Elendil when we next see him, if he continues to live." Fiona looked tense. "I also wonder how it is affecting our small ones." Fiona lay her hand instinctively on her belly. Elendil has many good answers, Nalin sweetly smiled. She laid a reassuring kiss on Fiona's cheek. Maybe this is all just natural and there's nothing to be concerned about. Fiona smiled at her sister and tried not to be worried for her sake. She patted Nalin on the shoulder and got up to go inside. Suddenly she was yearning to sit with Ijlam for a while. Ijlam and Fiona searched through the empty homes in the village until they found one that they liked. They wanted a place that overlooked the waters of the ocean bay. As much as they loved Thendiel's old home, they wanted a new start. The beach was a place of peaceful enjoyment as the couple chased each other playfully down the sandy shore. Fiona found big shells and brought them back to decorate their new home. She took the smaller ones she had collected and crafted them together on strands of thread to make clattering wind chimes that hung in the doorway. I dreamt of watching many young elflings playing in the sand below, EJ said. Fiona smiled as she leaned on the branch railing that was woven around the front of their entryway. Gulls squawked in the distance. Eldalorn should always be a place of peace for all Edelith, no matter how few we might be. A slight breeze moved her hair back from her shoulder. Fiona touched her belly, stroking her unborn as she spoke. EJ came over and hugged her tightly to himself. They silently looked out over the sandy beach together. The view was breathtaking. "I miss you, my beloved," Fiona whispered into his neck. Her breath sent a shiver of numbness over EJ. He could feel every fiber of his body yearning for her, but he restrained himself, fearing harm in her condition. "You cannot hurt me," Fiona said, reading his thoughts. "I cannot. I should not." EJ whispered low as the familiar nausea rose in his face and he blanched. Fiona ran her hand down his spine and felt the tension in his body. "Nalin tells me she knew of many couples, and it is okay." EJ peered at her, not sure of her words. Nalin lived when normal village life was abundant, and she helped her mother with many who were expecting. She told me it would be all right. EJ, are you listening? He sunk down to his knees in front of her, holding her belly to his ear. He whimpered softly. "She must never know the pain that we have endured, Fiona. We have to keep her safe from all danger. Her own papa cannot harm her. Not now." "Are you certain?" "Yes, I'm certain, my love. I will tell you if anything is strange." Ijlam did not get to say another word. Fiona's lips found his. She took him in a warm embrace. Ijlam could not deny the rise of his passion for her as he hungrily kissed her face and down her neck. He lifted her up into his arms and carried her into their private chambers. The solid door latch clunked loudly behind them, assuring all the privacy they desired. Rovash and Nalin decided to start rebuilding the wharf and clearing up the boats that they could salvage. They hoped to have one ship ready to sail so that they could visit the island Tolhath to pay their respects. The place would be allowed to grow wild because of the kinslaying that occurred there. It would always be considered a sacred tomb and deserving of their respect. Everyone in the small clan was happy to have ordinary lives. Even Rovash caught himself smiling. For the first time in ages, his face relaxed and he had a friendly look about him. Maybe it was that they had each other. Maybe it was from the gentler way of coming out of the ocean waves. But the anticipated emotional pain from the rebirth never surfaced in any of them. Fiona listened to each memory of their times among the cult and the dead in Ilmatar. Weapons and armor that had been a daily part of their lives were carefully cleaned and stored away. They were replaced by tunics and tools used for crafting and fixing. Eldalorn was revitalized as the couple scoured the once abandoned village for things that would help them start their new lives together.